Consumatum est.
Minsan daw, mayroon isang batang gamo-gamo na naakit sa liwanag ng apoy. Maski anong paalala ng kanyang ina na huwag siyang lalapit sa apoy, ay lapit pa rin siya ng lapit. Gustong-gusto niya ang liwanag ng apoy. Kaya sinuway niya ang piling ng kanyang ina. Lumipad siya ng lumipad, palibot sa apoy. Palapit ng palapit sa apoy. Hanggang sa magliyab ang pakpak niya. At tuluyan siyang mamatay.
Hi everyone, this is Angel BERDIDA, a second-year student from BSED Social Studies.
And this is Glendhon Burgos from the Bachelor of Secondary Education, major in Social Studies. And together with Miss Angel BERDIDA, we will be discussing the second travel abroad of our national hero, Dr. Jose Rizal. So, without further ado, let's watch the video. Japan experience. After the advice from the Governor General, his family and some of his close friends, Jose Rizal decided to leave the country, where he set sail from Hong Kong to Yokohama on February 22, 1880 aboard the ship Oceanic. After a short stay at the Grand Hotel in Yokohama, Rizal visited Tokyo, where he met the Spanish attaché in Japan, Juan Perez y Caballero, and he extended his invitation to stay in the office of the Spanish legation. Jose Rizal accepted the offer because he knew that he will be closely watched by the Spanish authorities. His acceptance was prompted by two reasons. First, to show that he is not afraid of being watched as he had nothing to hide. And second, to have more expenses for the hotel accommodations. In his brief visit in Tokyo, he met Seiko Usui, or Osi-san, who oftentimes passed by the gate of delegation in Tokyo. He introduced himself and eventually became good friends. In his diary, he mentioned how intense his love and affection towards her. With a quote, "Your image lives in my memory, and undoubtedly I am always thinking of you. Your name lives in the sight of my lips. Your image accompanies and animates all my thoughts." After his journey in Japan, Jose Rizal decided to visit United States of America. He boarded the steamer Belgic on April 13, 1888, where he met Atecho Sohiro, a Japanese writer. Momentarily, this person served as his companion throughout their voyage to San Francisco, until their arrival in London on December 1, 1888. After a long journey, Jose Rizal arrived in San Francisco on April 28, 1888, but they were not allowed to disembark because the health authorities placed the entire ship under quarantine because of an alleged cholera outbreak in the Far East, until they were allowed to land on May 4, 1888. His impression of United States was not good because of the prevailing racial discrimination, the inequality, and prejudice of the white Americans towards the black African Americans. He stayed at the Palace Hotel in San Francisco until May 6, 1888, and then decided to trip in New York by an overland train. The train passed through the states of Nevada, Utah, Colorado, Nebraska, and Illinois. On May 12, 1888, they stopped over to see the famous Niagara Falls and described it as the most splendid falls he had ever seen. After a week's journey, he arrived in New York City on May 13, 1888. He described New York as a great city where everything is new. He was able to visit the relics of George Washington and saw the majestic Brooklyn Bridge as well as the huge Statue of Liberty. After his visit in New York, he boarded the city of Rome, going to London. Aboarding the city of Rome, he reached Queenstown in Ireland on May 24, 1888. From there, he embarked on a ferry boat going to Liverpool and then traveled again by a train to London, England, and he arrived in London the next day. His visit in London was prompted because of his intentions to learn the English language and to annotate the book of Antonio de Morga, The Sucesos de las Islas Filipinas, History of the Philippine Island. On May 25, 1888, he first stopped at the Grand Hotel Midland and then stayed for a week at a house in Beresford Road and eventually transferred to a private home in number 37 Chalcot Crescent, Primrose Hill, Northwest, owned by the Beckett family. In London, he came to know of a Filipino resident, Dr. Antonio Marigidor, a wealthy man and a practicing lawyer who was exiled on 1872 because of the Cavite Mutiny, where they became good friends. He likewise met Dr. Reinhold Rost, who was introduced to him through a letter by Dr. Ferdinand Blumentritt. Dr. Rost was the director of the Library of the India Office and the best authority of Malayan customs and languages. Jose Rizal devoted his time by annotating the book of Dr. Morga. He rectified some important points so that the Filipino people will know and understand the history of their country. Rizal wrote in the prologue of his work that if the book succeeded in awakening the consciousness of our past, which have been erased from our memories, and if it is able to rectify the falsehood and calumny that had been committed, then I shall feel that I have not labored in vain. The annotation of Jose Rizal on Dr. Morga's book was later published in Paris on 1890. Still in London, Jose Rizal heard the sad news from Calamba that his brother-in-law, Manuel R. Hidalgo, was deported. He was deported by order of the superior government in town of Tagbilaran, Bohol in the Visayas, because allegedly he was filibuster, a representative of Jose Rizal, and was spreading anti-religious and impious ideas, though he, Manuel, believed that the accusations against him were baseless and illogical. On March 1889, Jose Rizal decided to go in Paris, France after his short stay in London. His arrival was in time for the opening of the International Exposition in Paris, which has ended to commemorate the French independence. After 11 months of stay in Paris, he moved again in Brussels, Belgium, on January 28, 1890, with his uncle Jose Alberto, where they stayed in a rented house in number 38 Rue Philippe Champagne, owned by the Jacobi sisters. His intentions to visit the Brussels were to write his second novel, entitled The El Filibusterismo, a sequel to his Noli Me Tangere, to assist in a local clique, to make a living, to attend to his correspondence with his family and fellow propagandists, to write articles for La Solidaridad. While in Brussels, he also experienced the persecution of his family and townmates back in Calamba because of conflict in the Calamba states. A letter of his brother Pasiano, he was informed of the petition to evict the tenants filed before the Justice of the Peace. His brother told him that at first they were hoping for a favorable judgment, but the case can only be done in the Supreme Court in Spain. He was a bit hesitant to attain justice. In a letter from his sister Lucia, he was given an account of how his family and townmates suffered. The letter reads, "Concerning our town, perhaps your heart would ache because of the blindness of our compatriot. You can then imagine that would happen when the lay brothers go out riding. The lieutenant of the civil guard sits on the little bench of the carriage, and the acting lieutenant goes over the curate. When the lay brothers have some orders for the hacienda, they sent out the captain." After Paris, Jose Rizal traveled to Spain and visited Madrid and Barcelona. His trip in Spain was prompted by his desire to contact his comrades. They were Marcelo H. del Pilar and Mariano Ponce. These two were forerunners of the propaganda movement in Spain. It was also his intention in visiting Spain to study the present political climate in relation to the campaign for reforms in the Philippines. After his brief visit, he returned to London to celebrate Christmas. Days after he returned from London, his Filipino comrades in Spain met him on the eve of the New Year's Day in Barcelona. The purpose of the gathering was the formation of an association which named as Asociación La Solidaridad. Was established to unite the Filipinos in Europe in their quest for reforms in the Philippines. Gallicano Apacible was elected as the president of the association, while Graciano Lopez Haina became the vice president, Manuel Santamaria as a secretary, Mariano Ponce as the treasurer, and Jose Maria Panganiban as an accountant. But despite that he was not elected, he was chosen as the honorary president. Rizal. To realize the objectives of the La Solidaridad, the members decided to put up a publication of the same name. As a result, many propagandists, including Jose Baron Fernandez, described this fortnightly as the most important paper of the Filipino abroad and their most significant work in connection with the propaganda movement. However, the La Solidaridad publication was not realized immediately. On February 15, 1889, the first issue came out. The publication was led by the Graciano Lopez Haina, the vice president of the association, who was also the editor of the paper. As the honorary president of the association, Jose Rizal wrote several articles that came out in the different editions of the propaganda paper. Among these were the letters to the women of Malolos, The Truth for Everyone, Barantes and the Tagalog Theater, and The Indolence of the Filipinos. Prior to his visit in Madrid, he wrote a letter to Marcelo H. del Pilar requesting him to stand as a lawyer for his family. He even sought help from the Asociación Hispano-Filipino and even went to the Minister of the Colonies to present their grievances against the injustices committed by the friars and the Gobernador General Valeriano Weyler. All his efforts remained futile because they lost in the case in court.
The El Filibusterismo. Before the printing of the second novel, Jose Rizal faced the same problem during his first novel. He ran out of money. That is why he wrote Jose Maria Basa, informing him of his situation and eventually sent him money, and another help came from Rodriguez Arias as royalty for the book sale of Dr. Morga. However, the amount of money he received wasn't enough to print because of the high cost of printing. But with full determination to print his novel, he moved in Ghent from Brussels for a cheaper printing. In Ghent, he met Jose Alejandrino, a Filipino engineering student at the University of Ghent. Alejandrino agreed to share a room with Jose Rizal. But when everything seemed to fall apart, good news came from Valentin Ventura, where he agreed to loan him money for the completion of the printing. Thus, the printing of the second part pushed through, and finally the El Filibusterismo was published in Ghent on September 18, 1891. Jose Rizal immediately sent 2 copies to Basa and Lopez in Hong Kong, while to Valentin Ventura, who was very instrumental to him, the copy of the original manuscript of the novel. The El Filibusterismo was sequel of the Noli Me Tangere, where Jose Rizal dedicated it to the martyrs of the Cavite Mutiny. They were Mariano Gomez, Jose Burgos, and Jacinto Zamora. The execution of the 3 priests was significant to the title of the novel. According to Jose Rizal, in his letter to Blumentritt, explained the meaning of the title of the novel. The El Filibusterismo is little known in the Philippines. The masses do not know it yet. I heard it for the first time in 1872, when a tragic execution took place. Execution of the Gomborza. I still remember the panic that this word has created. Our Father forbade us to utter it, as well as the words Cavite, Burgos, etc. The Manila newspaper and the Spaniards applied this word to the one whom they wanted to make revolutionary suspect. the Filipinos belonging to the educated class hear the meaning of the word, it does not have the meaning of three brothers, but rather means a dangerous patriot who will be soon hanged as well as presumptuous man. It was his good friend Ferdinand Blumentritt who wrote the introduction of the novel. From the message written by Blumentritt, one can discern that El Filibusterismo is more intense than the Noli Me Tangere in terms of the political ideas. The introduction reads, "The policy of the profligers and retrogrades led to the growth of filibusterism and convinced the Filipinos that there was no other salvation but separation from Mother Spain." He even admitted that the El Filibusterismo was inferior to that of the Noli Me Tangere. In his letter to Marcelo del Pilar, he wrote, "For me, the El Filibusterismo as a novel is inferior as compared to the Noli Me Tangere, so that receive cum clavo sales with a grain of salt the opinion of those who tell me that the El Filibusterismo is superior to the Noli Me Tangere. Blumentritt and all those in Paris and Barcelona, for their benevolence towards me, said it is superior. I attributed it only to their benevolence. You are the first one to tell me the truth, and you coincide with the manner of my thinking. This flatters me, as it proves that I still know how to judge myself." Bound for Hong Kong. A month after his second novel was published, Jose Rizal decided to go in Hong Kong. However, prior to his departure, there was confusion in his mind as to whether he would go home to be with his family or to proceed to the British colony. He wrote to Blumentritt, "I still don't know exactly whether I go to the Philippines or establish myself in Hong Kong. My country draws me near. I want to embrace my parents and brothers, but my friends and countrymen are against it." On October 18, 1891, Jose Rizal made up his mind and left Europe via the SS Melbourne. After a month-long trip, he arrived in Hong Kong where Jose Maria Basa welcomed him. While in Hong Kong, he practiced his profession as a surgeon through his colleague Dr. Lorenzo Marquez, a Portuguese doctor. He rented a house at number 2 Rednaxilia Terrace, which served as his clinic and his home. It was in Hong Kong also, which gave him the opportunity to reunite with his family. On December 6, 1891, his father Pasiano and brother-in-law Sylvester Ubaldo arrived in Hong Kong. In his letter to his sister Maria, Rizal expressed his profound joy on seeing some of his family and talked about his father's improvement, and at the same time revealed how he missed his mother Doña Chudora. The letter reads, "Father, Mr. Pasiano, and Bestre, Sylvester Baldo, were already here, thanks God. Father has put on weight and his cheeks have become pinkish. He is cheerful, he always walks around, and he is very much pleased in Hong Kong. Tell Mother that I have very great desire to see her and to operate her eyes, if this letter should find her there still." Finally, his mother together with his sisters, Lucia, Josefa, and Trinidad, arrived also in Hong Kong. Their family was reunited just in time for Christmas and New Year. Rizal wrote to Blumentritt on December 30, 1891, telling him of his profound happiness that his family was with him in Hong Kong. The letter reads, "They are now here, and thanks to God that they find themselves in a free country. Life in the Philippines has become impossible without courtesy, without virtue, without justice." While in Hong Kong, there were ideas of his plans to go home. In fact, before his mother and some of his sisters joined him in Hong Kong, he wrote a letter to them on December 1, 1891, of his desire to return back home, but instead to his surprise went in Hong Kong to see him. Another opposition came from his brother-in-law, Antonio Lopez, who informed him that everyone doesn't want him to go home because of their fear that he, Jose, will be persecuted. He wrote, "I'm glad that you have abandoned your plan to come here. Well, almost everybody is opposing to your coming, and I am also of the same opinion, as I have already told Tatay and Senor Pasiano in my letter last month, not to tell you come home, to avoid greater evils and displeasures, which you already know. I believe that from there, without coming here, you can do all you want for the welfare of the Philippines. Aside from his family, his friends and contemporaries likewise do not want him to go home because they feared that with the novels he wrote, his attackers will surely look after him. Arrival in Manila, second homecoming. Despite the opposition of his family and friends, Jose Rizal firmly decided to go home in the Philippines from Hong Kong. In his letter to Blumentritt, dated September 22, 1891, I have to return to the Philippines. Life here is a burden to me. I have to give an example to show that we do not fear death, terrible though it may be. Besides, there has been many complaints about me. I have secret enemies. I want to live so as not to hear anything anymore. With my political enemies, I have my destiny. If I die, you shall remain. It is better to die than to live miserably. Before his scheduled departure, Jose Rizal wrote 2 letters. One was for his family and the other was to his fellow Filipinos. Both letters were dated June 20, 1892. He entrusted the letters to his good friend Dr. Lorenzo Marquez and told him to open the letter only after his death. Jose Rizal left Hong Kong with his sister Lucia back home to the Philippines, and at the same informed the Governor-General of his return. On June 26, 1892, Rizal and Lucia arrived in Manila at 12 noon, where they were met by soldiers. One of them was a major, a captain, and a sergeant of the constabulary who were in disguise. After going through customs inspection at the port, he went straight to Hotel de Oriente to check in. In the letter of Rizal to His Excellency, he mentioned Hotel de Oriente. It was probably his intention to inform where he would stay, so that the Governor-General might realize that he had nothing to hide with his arrival. At the same time, just in case the Governor-General will summon him for a meeting, then he can easily be located. Meeting with Governor Despol. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon on the day of his arrival, Rizal went immediately in Malacanang Palace to seek courtesy with Governor-General Eulogio Despol, but he was advised to return at 7 in the evening. The first meeting was short and lasted for only 3 minutes. Though brief, his conduct with General produced a positive result. The Governor-General lifted the deportation of his father. However, he received no pronouncement yet as to the fate of his brother Pasiano and the rest of his family. The Governor-General set another meeting with him on June 29. While waiting for the second meeting with the Governor-General, Rizal visited some of his sisters. The next day, after his arrival, he went to Bulacan, Pampanga, Tarlac, and later to Cavite to visit some of his companions. Afterwards, he returned to the palace for his scheduled meeting with Governor-General Despol on Wednesday, but he met him at 7:30, almost the same time during their first meeting. Although his interview with His Excellency lasted for more than 2 hours, he did not obtain a pardon for the deportation of his brother. After the meeting, the Governor-General requested Jose Rizal to come back the next day. As instructed, he returned in see Governor-General Despol on Thursday. At this time, the governor granted a pardon for his brother. Again, he was instructed to come back for another meeting. On Sunday, he returned again to Malacanang Palace and extended his gratitude for the lifting of the deportation of his father and brother. In this meeting, Governor-General Despol asked whether Rizal wanted to go back in Hong Kong, and he answered affirmatively. After the meeting, he was asked to return on July 6.